On to other news now. On Thursday and Friday, Indonesia led the first G20 meeting of finance ministers and central bank governors as part of Indonesia's G20 presidency this year. Indeed, finance leaders from G20 gathered both virtually and in person to discuss many challenges and issues such as soaring inflation and financing needs to help deal with the pandemic.
Despite the many challenges posed by the pandemic, it is still full speed ahead for Indonesia's G20 presidency. On the 17th and 18th of February, the first G20 meeting of finance ministers and central bank governors were held at the Jakarta Convention Center. As hundreds of delegates from G20 countries took part both in person and virtually as well. In his opening speech, Indonesia's President Joko Widodo expressed optimism that this meeting between G20 finance ministers and central bank governors can create fiscal and monetary policies to counter the many challenges faced today. However, President Widodo affirmed that the pandemic is far from over and that all countries must come together and recover together.
The winter is coming, dan saat ini winter yang berat benar-benar datang. Pandemi belum berakhir, dan ekonomi dunia masih terguncang. Dalam situasi seperti ini, tidak ada satu negara pun yang bisa bangkit sendirian. Semua negara saling terkoneksi. Tidak ada yang terisolasi. Pertemuan antar Menteri Keuangan dan Gubernur Bank Sentral dari negara-negara G20 ini pasti bisa merumuskan langkah-langkah kebijakan fiskal dan moneter yang saling bersinergi antar negara untuk menyelesaikan permasalahan kita bersama, permasalahan dunia.
Meanwhile, surging food and energy prices are among the challenges the financial leaders are confronting as they discuss how to best nurture a global economic recovery. Inflation in many countries around the world is surging, with the U.S. reporting inflation of 7.5%, its highest since 1982, while inflation in the UK also rose to 5.5%, its highest in 30 years.
Inflation risks remain skewed to the upside, driven by supply chain disruption, labor market mismatches, wage pressure, and higher energy prices. These measures have been more persistent than previously expected.
Meanwhile, the United States Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, was also in attendance at the FMCBG meeting, as she noted the dire impact of the pandemic on economies and health systems around the world, but also praised the forming of the G20 Joint Finance and Health Task Force to bridge the gap in financing for health needs.
COVID-19 has really underscored the critical role of health in economies and how an emerging infectious disease in one country can pose a threat to every other country. The G20 took an important step in establishing the Finance Health Task Force to examine and achieve progress on priorities at the intersection of health and finance.
This G20 gathering also comes as many economies are trading a precarious path between raising costs of borrowing to cool inflation and helping to support recoveries from the pandemic. Indeed, coming up with a collaborative exit strategy from the impacts of the pandemic is a key part of successful global economic recovery and is one of the main focuses during Indonesia's G20 presidency.
Driven by supply chain disruption, labor market